What's goody, Shellitronnn here. You can call me Shells, and I'm back at again with a brand new video, and I'm gonna keep it a Bowberry biscuit. I could not have predicted this. Look, when this season first started, and really before this season even started, we had so many changes on offense. We already know a brand new head coach, brand new offensive coordinator. We have a brand new quarterback. And with the addition of Robbie Anderson, we knew that this team could have a very explosive offensive scheme. It might take a little bit of time to tweak and get it right and get the timing and the chemistry right between all the players on offense. But I'm pretty sure for the most part, the majority of Panthers fans felt like this offense would not be a problem. This offense can move up and down the field. This offense had all the weapons it needed. And you could even argue the Panthers had more weapons than the team really needed. We have so many dudes on this offense who can make plays, not just, small plays here and there. We have guys who can be consistently good, either running the ball, catching the ball, and we have a good play caller in Joe Brady who has been proven he can call plays. But I don't think there was a single Panthers fan who could have made this prediction, and I think I've said and heard every single prediction that there is out there. Curtis Samuel, our fourth-year wide receiver out of the Ohio State, is not a factor in this offense. Now, last year he had a pretty good year. Maybe it was less than what people thought, but over 600 yards and getting 6 touchdowns, being the team's third option when the two guys ahead of you both had over 1,000 yards receiving. I count that as a very good year for any third option receiver on any NFL team. Any year you want to talk about, bring up any season in NFL history, and I'll tell you Curtis Samuel as a third option played as well as any other third option in NFL history, given the context. But in this season, we're finding that Curtis Samuel is just not in the scheme at all. And I think we understood, with Robbie Anderson coming to the team, we might see a little bit less of DJ and Curtis. We may have figured they'd get 1 or 2 less receptions a game each. We may have thought that, okay, well, 1 week will be this guy, 1 week will be this guy. It'll just switch off from week to week. We'll see one guy really show up 1 week, get most of the attention, and the next week he may have a down week. We may see it's DJ Moore and Curtis. Then 1 week we'll see it's all DJ. 1 week we'll see it's all Robbie. But what we're seeing in this season so far is that Curtis Samuel is just not a big part of the scheme. That could be because of what Joe Brady's doing, but it also could be because, look, Teddy Bridgewater has made it very, very obvious in his play on the field that he is most comfortable when he's throwing the ball to Robbie Anderson. Robbie's been really good this year. Robbie's been nothing short of a top tier wide receiver talent for the team. He has the second most targets, but he has the most receptions on the team. 24 targets, 20 receptions for 278 yards. He's almost averaging 100 yards per game. We haven't seen that in a minute now. Look, it's been a smooth minute since we've seen that kind of production out of wide receiver. It's still early, but Robbie has shown that he looks like he can be a very consistent piece in this offense. And DJ Moore, last week against the Chargers, we saw he didn't get much love until very, very late in the game. He did end up with the most yards receiving with 65, but he wasn't really the hugest factor in that game, in the passing game, consistently throughout all 60 minutes. But he is our number 2 receiver with 26 targets, 14 receptions, and 239 yards. Curtis Samuel, believe it or not, has less targets than Mike Davis. Curtis Samuel has 14 targets. Mike Davis has 17 targets. Mike Davis did not really get no love, to be real with you. In the first game, C-Mac goes down, and then we see Mike Davis's numbers go up. But it is really strange to see that our backup running back in Mike Davis has more targets than Curtis Samuel, a guy who, and I think it was last preseason, last training camp, he was thought to be looking even better than DJ was in training camp in 2019. We thought that was going to be Curtis Samuel's breakout year. Remember that? Every single article, every single report was Curtis Samuel looks like the better receiver of the two, and this is going to be his year. He still had a good year, like I mentioned, but this season, so far, 14 targets, 11 receptions for less than 100 total yards in this season is not what any single Panthers fan would have expected. But if you think that sounds bad, it gets even worse when you break it down week to week. The story gets even deeper. Week 1 against the Raiders, Curtis had 8 targets, 5 receptions for 38 yards. That's already 8 of his 14 targets. 8 of his 14 targets came in one game. Week 2 against the Bucks, he only had 2 targets. 2 total targets in 60 minutes of play. That is unacceptable. And just this past week, he had 4 total targets against the Chargers for a total of 45 yards. Did I mention he only had 13 yards in that Bucks game? I don't know how else to put it, so I'm just going to call it how I see it. Curtis Samuel has been schemed out of this Panthers offense. We're talking about 38 yards one week, 13 yards the next week, and then 45 yards the very next week. This is not what anyone would have called coming into this season with Joe Brady, Teddy Bridgewater, even with Robbie and DJ here, and with no Christian McCaffrey at the back end of the Bucks game, and for this whole Chargers game, you're telling me that we couldn't find Curtis Samuel? These are backup numbers. These are, a starting tight end numbers, really. 38, 13, and 45. Honestly, this is numbers that you would expect a team that actually goes to their tight ends. They will get more yards than this in the game. They get more than 2 targets. They get more than 4 targets. And I know what you're thinking. Those numbers don't tell the whole story, and you're exactly right. Because it's not just receiving yards he's getting. He also does get the ball in rush attempts. This season, we haven't seen that much from him in the past couple years. But this year, we have been trying him out a little bit in the run game. Week 1, we didn't do it very often. It was only 1 rush attempt. He got 5 yards. It wasn't really nothing going on there. Against the Bucks, he had 4 rush attempts for 26 yards. That's an average of 6.5 per rush. But I remember him getting stuffed, I think, twice on runs. So I guess he broke out 1. I don't actually remember what his longest run was in that Bucks game. But just this past week against the Chargers, he had 4 more rush attempts, bringing his total to 9. And he had a total of 7 yards on the ground. 7 yards on the ground, a total of, 52 yards in the game. Curtis Samuel is way too talented for these to be his numbers in 3 straight weeks. Now, I mentioned this in the very first week. We saw that in the first week, DJ, Robbie, and Curtis, they had 9, 8, and 8 targets. It was very even. I said, look, this looks good for this week, but I'm going to be very surprised if the scheme shakes out every single week where these guys have very close target shares. You just really can't do that in the flow of a game for the full 16 games. Some guys are going to have to go with less some weeks. Some guys are just going to have to shine. In other weeks, you might see one guy get 14 targets one week, and some guys get 2 or 3. Now, 3 games isn't the biggest sample size, but this man getting 38, 13, and 45 in 3 weeks is enough to make me say there is something going on here. Curtis Samuel has fallen out of favor in this offense. I'm not liking what I'm seeing here. I'm really not liking what I'm seeing here. This is problematic, and I kind of do feel bad for Curtis because, look, it's next man up. When Robbie comes in, Robbie's a monster. You don't want to take away from Robbie's opportunities. I don't want to take away from DJ's opportunities. But you really do hate to see this for Curtis in a contract year where it's looking like he may not be able to get the numbers that he really wants in order for someone to give him the contract that he really wants that would match his talent and his skill set, because Curtis Samuel is a very talented wide receiver. I would say that Curtis could be the number 2 receiver on a championship level team. I'm not quite sure he could be the number 1 receiver on a Super Bowl team unless you have a really good defense, but he has the talent and the skill set, both in the run and the pass game, in the right scheme, of course, where he could be the number 2 receiver on a team that goes all the way and lifts a Lombardi. But it looks like this scheme is not going to be the one to really show what he can do consistently. I don't know what's going to happen to Curtis Samuel. But what I will say is, as a front office, as a team, as a franchise, and as an owner with Dave at the very top, you might have to start asking yourself some very tough questions about just how well Curtis Samuel fits in this offense. And if this is what you're going to get out of Curtis, I mean, you can get this out of Seth Roberts. Seth Roberts is a good enough receiver where he can get these kind of numbers for you at least. You can at least start looking at your tight ends and approximate this kind of production out of them. You might have to start asking yourself questions like, if this is what we're going to get, this is what we're going to look for out of Curtis Samuel, it might be time to make some moves and maybe find some draft picks. I don't want to see him go, but if this is what you're going to do with him here, you may as well find something for him. This team will get way more value out of a draft pick next season than having Curtis on this roster and never using him. 38, 13, and 45 yards. This does not sound good to me. 8 targets his first game and then 2 targets and 4 targets. Has not missed a pass in the last 2 weeks. If we're not going to look for him, you You got to find value somewhere. I'm starting to question whether or not Joe Brady and Teddy Bridgewater are really looking for Curtis Samuel, or if they're going to adjust the scheme to try to purposefully force the ball to him so he gets more targets week to week. I have a lot of questions about this offensive scheme. We're moving the ball. Look, we're moving the ball up and down the field. The question is red zone play calling and execution. That's nothing to do with Curtis Samuel specifically. I'm kind of worried. Okay, I am kind of worried about what Curtis Samuel's role is on this team and if he really has a very valuable role with the way we're playing offense so far. I got some questions and I'm sure they'll be answered sometime soon. But it's going to be some tough questions and we might get some tough answers. That's how I feel about it, man. What are your thoughts on Curtis Samuel, his role, what he's been getting so far? Do you think his number's going to go up soon? Or do you think the team is going to start asking some very tough questions and maybe be looking to move him this season? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below. And you already know what to do with that like button.
Cheers to you, appreciate the chance. Being told y'all I been the man. Being told y'all I had the gift. Tell a friend to tell a friend. Real ones gonna recommend. Count this as another win.